For decades, a chilling idea has dominated psychology. Take ordinary, healthy people, give them a uniform and absolute authority, and they will spontaneously devolve into sadistic monsters. But recently unsealed archives from the world's most famous psychology study reveal a different story. The cruelty we thought was spontaneous was actually manufactured. We now have the actual 1971 audio recordings of a researcher explicitly scolding a guard for failing to be tough enough. This 50-year-old study continues to shape modern prison policy, train military personnel, and serve as the default explanation for wartime atrocities. If this foundational study is compromised, the evidence for our most common theories on institutional cruelty begins to unravel. In August 1971, 24 healthy male college students agreed to live in a mock prison built in the basement of Stanford University for $15 a day. The researchers subjected participants to an intensely realistic simulation. Students acting as prisoners were arrested by real police, publicly booked, and fingerprinted. The students assigned as guards were systematically stripped of their individuality, issued identical khaki uniforms, and ordered to wear reflective sunglasses to mask their eyes. Within 6 days, the experiment spiraled into severe psychological abuse, from sleep deprivation to public humiliation and erratic, arbitrary punishments. This forced lead researcher Philip Zimbardo to halt the study early and coin the situational hypothesis, the theory that oppressive systems, rather than individual personalities, dictate cruel behavior. This established the consensus that anyone is capable of committing atrocities given the right environment. Yet that conclusion assumes the participants were acting naturally, rather than delivering a performance they knew the researchers wanted to see. Psychologists recognize a phenomenon called demand characteristics. This occurs when participants figure out a study's purpose and alter their behavior to satisfy expectations. In a follow-up test, 81% of students accurately guessed the hypothesis beforehand. This bias started with the recruitment poster. Researchers demonstrated that advertising for prison life created severe selection bias. As this chart shifts to a split bar comparison, we see a stark contrast. Data shows individuals replying to the prison life ad scored higher in aggressiveness, narcissism, and Machiavellianism, while scoring lower in empathy compared to a standard control group. Philip Zimbardo did not test a blank slate of average humans. He observed a specific group already predisposed to toxic behavior. To see what happens when you remove those expectations and researcher influence, we must look at what happened 30 years later. In 2001, psychologists Alex Haslam and Steve Riker conducted the BBC prison study. This project served as a rigorous, modern test of the situational hypothesis. The researchers recreated the unequal power dynamic of a mock prison, but introduced one critical variable change. They gave guards absolutely zero instructions, coaching, or guidance. Without authority figures pushing them, guards refused to adopt cruel behaviors. The hierarchy quickly collapsed, and prisoners actually unionized to overthrow the guards. Zimbardo publicly dismissed this replication. He argued it was effectively a reality television show where participants were overacting, compromising the data. While the BBC study provided strong counter-evidence, the proof that the original experiment was manipulated was quietly sitting in Stanford's own basement archives. Recently, forensic archival researchers and journalists began investigating the raw, unsealed 1971 data. They discovered transcripts detailing active coaching. In one specific recording, the undergraduate warden, David Jaffe, explicitly scolds a guard for being too accommodating. Jaffe tells the guard the entire experiment will fail unless the guards actively work to create a feeling of absolute helplessness and fear in the prisoners. Zimbardo maintained he only instructed guards to establish powerlessness and never explicitly ordered physical cruelty. However, the archived recordings contradict the narrative of a completely hands-off observation. The guards were complying with specific top-down instructions to act apart for the experimenters. Archivist Thibault Letexier discovered Zimbardo explicitly told the guards he was under a research grant to study mob behavior and the loss of identity. He needed the guards to act tough to prove the variables he had already claimed were present in prisons. Today, modern social psychologists use a different framework to explain the raw data from 1971, a concept known as identity leadership. This model shows that ordinary people do not blindly conform to negative roles. Systematic cruelty occurs when authorities actively build a shared social identity, convincing their subordinates that abusive actions are a noble necessity for a greater cause. The evidence suggests that oppressive systems do not inevitably turn good people into monsters. Rather, people will commit monstrous acts when authority figures explicitly give them permission and a supposed moral justification. The Stanford prison experiment remains a historical case study in the power of researcher influence and human compliance.